45% of all ads from the best ad makers in the world has a negative impact on your subconsciousness, meaning that you will like the brand less after exposure. If your ad is perceived as quality, you have a 500% increase in conversion. We scanned 600 people's brains over 2 years to see how you could predict ad outcome.
How often are affiliates actually cannibalizing an operator's traffic?
I mean, I would say it happens all the time. But if you put in like pricing, it had like 20 to 30% negative effect. As the millisecond you notice pricing, you pivot away. 10 years ago, attribution was actually rather effective. Today it's extremely weak, and yet everyone is using it. Usually 5 to 20% over attribution is allocated to the performance channels. And if you do that over time, you will go severely wrong with your marketing spend. Your growth will basically stop.
Hello, welcome back to Odys Podcast. My name is Aneta Samko, and today my guest is Staffan Engström, who is the founder and CEO of Fieldstream AI. Thank you so much for joining us today, Staffan.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a privilege.
Can you tell us a little bit about your company? Do you also have the partnership with Deloitte? Can you paint a picture for us?
So we started 2021 in Sweden, and it's not only iGaming, just to start with there. We do a lot of different verticals, finance, auto, health, FMCG and so forth. But iGaming is about 50% of our portfolio.
And what is the size of your clients? How many are on the platform currently? What are the marketing budgets that you work with?
Yeah, so we have about 40 clients on the platform. Mm-hmm. If you look at the marketing budgets, it varies from perhaps 5 million to 500 million.
Wow.
So the big tier one operators in iGaming are like 3 to 500 million. They are by far the largest. But if you look at big auto clients, still close to 100 million in Europe, mm-hmm. and so forth. So,
and that's per year or?
Yeah, yearly budgets.
Yearly budgets.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how did you get the idea to start the company? What problem have you seen that made you realize I need to build this analytics tool?
Yeah, so I spent 25 years in marketing analytics. It's the only thing I know. So I started at IDC in Boston in 2001 doing marketing predictions. So they just collect a lot of marketing data to create forecasts for IT. Did that for a couple of years. And then I went into media and built a TV network of TV stations in the US. It was really hard for us to measure the impact of our eyeballs in the US media space, being a startup. So with that, we had to sell the company. When the market crashed 2009, the funding went away and we had to improve the metrics. We sold the company to NBC for not that much. I came back to Sweden and then I started to work for one of the bigger publishers that reached every Swede and every Norwegian every day. And they had exact the same problem.
Oh,
they
really?
They could not prove the actual value. The only clients that could see the direct value was iGaming companies, because they only calculate the direct conversion, right? So the direct conversion from banner ads. So when I saw that, I felt like, where are all the other advertisers? Where are the car companies? Where are like the health companies, FMCG? We need to prove the metrics for them too. Mm-hmm. So that's when it started. Yeah, so I did a lot of in-house testing for 3 years, like entrepreneurship, with a lot of universities in the world. Mm-hmm. And then I realized how many brands that was interested in what I was doing. I launched Fieldstream as a consulting company in 2016.
So a lot of CMOs think they already know where the data is coming from, since now we have like proliferation of programs and systems that just throw you all these like huge sets of data.
Yeah.
But what are they actually looking at and when they see those data, and what are they missing? What does the data not tell them?
Yes. If you look at the various systemic error in marketing, you have to go back to the genius of Google. If you look at their equation for AdWords, it's Q1 times P1 equals Q2 times P2. In essence, it means that advertiser 1 will win because they have the highest quality score. So the higher quality you have, the lower price you pay. It's the only equation in the world that really takes quality as its heart. And 50% of quality score for Google is predicted clicks. But if you look at clicks, it's really good as a proxy when you're in search mode. It does not make any sense in any other media, because it's a visual impression that matters, not exactly what you do with the ad, right? So you have this basic lie that clicks has been the foundation proxy for years across all media, which means that you only look at the very end of the funnel where you capture the last click and the conversion, and you don't know what the sponsorship or the radio or the TV will do. And that's the problem we are solving. So we are looking at this holistic measurement of all media channels. But if you looked at performance channel for 20 years as a CMO, and you have a fairly good understanding, you think, of the other channels, but you don't. Because 1 to 5% wrong month by month makes an enormous difference in your growth trajectory over a couple of years.
Exactly. Like there are cases of companies that thought like their Facebook ads are not working, and they turn it, the moment they turn it off, like it dries up, right?
Yeah.
So can you actually walk us through why the last click attribution is wrong, and what should we do instead?
So last click attribution is based on the thought that the last place where you actually clicked in gives the entire weight,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
But that journey could have started way before across several different channels. And that's multi-touch attribution. But that still only takes into consideration online channels, right? And now with a lot of like the cookie deprivation and GDPR and all these privacy laws coming into place, 10 years ago, attribution was actually rather effective. Today it's extremely weak. And yet everyone is using it. And it's really weak measurement form. But it gives a truth that most people are used to and feel comfortable and resonate rather well with the performance channels. Because it gives a price for the actual conversion, right?
So when you actually show your analytics results to a CMO or other stakeholders, what are they surprised about first? Usually, what shocks them?
Yeah, I think what people get most surprised about is that if you start to understand what the offline channels do and how inflated the performance channels are, like usually 5 to 20% over attribution is allocated to the performance channels. And if you do that over time, you will go severely wrong with your marketing spend. Your growth will basically stop. And then you try to act with like your other channels and try to make up for it. So what we do is we compare the attribution with ad platform data, with our models, week by week, month by month. You get a really good understanding of where it went wrong and why you should shift channel spend. So then it's more like the first couple of months in a project, it's more an educational effort because no one wants to move channel spend right away because they've been so dead set. I mean, these are people that it's a lot of, a lot of really smart people, they understand dynamics, but it is shifting a little bit of their worldview and it takes time to just accept it.
Can you give an example of like the channels that you have seen in the past were not as effective and you had to move to somewhere else?
I mean, if you look at what really works, it seems like in iGaming, just to have one example, is like radio is always coming out really well.
Really?
Yeah.
That is surprising.
Yeah, because it seems like you're in a relaxed mode, you're listening to good songs, you are open to be a bit interrupted, because you are in that mindset. But if you look at a lot of, it's a little bit harder on the other side. But if you are a number one operator in the market, it's easy to spend too much on search, because you're just trying to defend your position. But that is inventory, and that's demand that was already there from the beginning. So it's easy to play safe with search.
Okay. So do the CMOs even actually want to know what performs well?
Yeah, no, of course. But it's usually rather progressive CMOs. And it's driven by CEO and CFO. It's usually where we come in, it's driven by the finance side, who wants to get a much, much better idea. Because just for iGaming, growth has always been like the winner, not profitable growth. Just onboard as many players as possible without truly understanding where the value lies. They might only play once and then they disappear.
Exactly.
That whole paradigm is drastically changing now.
And a lot of iGaming operators depend heavily on affiliates. This is very common. But granting what I heard about your analytics, oftentimes it seems that traffic would come to the operator anyway, without necessarily the affiliate. How often does that actually happen?
I mean, there are two sets of that equation. On the one hand, affiliates do not create lifetime models themselves. So once they hand over a player, they're a bit in the dark because they didn't have to prove it. But now that's shifting as so many operators are much less willing to do very generous deals. So it's a lot of discussion now where the true value lies for the affiliates. On the one hand, the big affiliate companies like Mr. Gamble and RakeTech are trying to be real media platforms and understand the true value. But there's still very many smaller affiliates that just want to push the traffic, get a good deal, and move on. And they will always be there. But the big affiliate companies are making much more effort to understand the true value and then have a meaningful negotiation with operators. So they understand what value they bring to the table.
And how often are affiliates actually cannibalizing an operator's traffic?
I would say it happens all the time. I mean, if you don't understand where all your ATL channels are coming from, and you're willing to give away 50% of the rev share, it is cannibalizing on your profit margin, of course. So you need to understand the exact weight of where your brand value lies. Because then you understand how much you need to bid for performance channels and how much deals you're willing to make with affiliates. I mean, it's such a highly competitive market. If there are 20 iGaming brands in a market, you need to know exactly the weight that your brand is giving you, the trust. Because once you know the level of the trust that your brand have and strengthen it, you have to pay less on bad deals and less on bad auctions. And then you can start to move up the value chain. And that is the true game for iGaming right now. Understand the brand value, understand your exact position, how much you need to bid for the most expensive players that are right there in the marketplace, and what kind of affiliate deals you need to have in place.
So with the performance channels, as you mentioned, they get very much scrutinized. Every click is tracked. But brand spend, like TV sponsorships, radio, they don't get measured at all. Does your model change that? And if so, like how?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you don't measure your offline channels. It's just you don't do it together with all your other channels. So like say, Google is a really good example. I mean, they have launched their own solution for this. So they obviously are really keen to understand like YouTube's impact together with search. So now like these big systems are starting to measure all the channels, largely driven by the whole notion of too much is being spent at the very end. Google is pushing out a lot of the affiliates too, right, from their search ranking. To a large extent, the industry shift now is driven by startups like us and Google, who has a keen interest in understanding the dynamic between all the channels.
And your model, your platform actually relies on machine learning, deep neural network, generative AI, and MMM, marketing mix modeling.
Yeah.
Marketing mix modeling has been around for quite a while.
Yeah.
Can you tell us why hasn't it been adopted in iGaming and other commercial industries like that?
Yeah, so marketing mix modeling has been around since the 70s. It started in FMCG, so big advertising spend. So every second year they did like sanity checks, put in like 50 statisticians, crunched all the numbers, say, oh, we're doing the right thing. It's a really hard exercise. So I think like it was usually done as a sanity check. But the last 3 years, this has been done through machine learning instead. So it's being done like on an ongoing basis, monthly, weekly, quarterly, yearly. So you don't like waste a lot of resources just doing one model, then you put on a shelf. So the big shift now is using it as an ongoing measurement system. The problem for iGaming, I would say, is that when I came down to Malta 3 years ago, no one was really ready. No one had the data pipelines ready to do this. All the system was spread out from the affiliates, from the search team, from the brand team, from the PPC team, all over. And they all competed with each other, these teams. So who was the hero team? Who brought home the bacon? So now like senior management is doing really, really a lot of data pipeline work for these models to start to be implemented. And now it's happening. Now we see the shift. Yeah. But there's still a lot of operators that do not have the data in order to do this. Yeah.
So when you come to a new company, do you have to do any like data management cleaning or kind of setting it up? How does that work? Or are they ready?
No, I mean, it depends. Sometimes they're ready. A lot of companies do not have the data in order when we come in. And that's why we use with Deloitte. Because they have their data team that goes in and do an analysis of what needs to be done and how long time that will take in a really, structured way. And then they help us with the whole project management aspect once we start to build a model. I mean, they're data expert. My team is 14 engineers. I do not have the manpower at all to do that myself. So that has been a tremendously valuable relationship for me over the last 2 years as we do these big projects together.
And you mentioned the quality of the ads before. And I know you have studied brain scans. Can you tell us about it and how does the brain scanning analysis that you have done, what does it tell you about the quality?
So Fieldstream started as a consulting company. So when I saw what the Google algorithm did for ad quality and how genius it was for Google, but for no one else, I felt like I need to go into the mind. So I began scanning brains in 2016. So I sold this project to 40 brands, global brands in the Nordics. And I brought in a neuromarketing lab from Denmark, and I brought in a neuromarketing professor from Stanford, who was a disciple of Kahneman. So he was his name is Baba Shiv, amazing man. So he was so interested in what the mind really thinks about ads. Because your mind is basically 80% subconscious and 20% conscious. And if I show you a survey of ads, it's your conscious mind that will just give an answer. What you really think will never come up in a survey. That's really important to understand, right? Yeah. So we scanned 600 people's brains over 2 years to see how you could predict ad outcome. So among the findings, when we scanned all these brains, there was obviously a lot of really interesting aspects. So one, I would say 45% of all ads from the best ad makers in the world has a negative impact on your subconsciousness, meaning that you will like the brand less after exposure.
Really?
Yeah. So that means that almost half of all ads actually do the opposite.
Wow.
Because everyone is aiming for you to click with an ad.
So those that we measured as a quality ones based on the click attribution, correct?
Yeah.
These actually, you found out 45% of them have negative impact.
On your subconsciousness.
Yes.
You move away from them, all right?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's huge. And then on the positive side, so if your ad is perceived as quality by the receiver, you have a 500% increase in conversion.
Wow.
Which makes for, like, with all this AI generated content, you have to be really careful.
Yes.
Now that you take away your best creative people and let generative AI create ads to see what actually happens. Because if you had built your brand over the last 10 years and been really diligent about creating quality, that could be erased if you start to push out bad ads now.
So what is a quality ad for the subconscious? What are the characteristics?
Yeah, I would say it depends a lot for each brand and how it's perceived. But what we did see in the data was that if you have got an acceptance for a creative asset and have built up an expectation of a continued storytelling from that creative, so you already have people's attention, that is where you get the quality, because you have an ongoing storytelling that people want to see your material. So it's hard to break into someone's consciousness. It's hard to earn their trust. But once you have earned the trust, then you can start to build a much, much deeper relationship. But you need to be really careful to make sure that you actually earn that trust. And that's required a lot of testing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you seen any patterns emerging among those ads that had negative impact on the subconscious? Have they had anything in common that destroyed that trust and turned the customers away?
Yeah, so sound effects could be very damaging if it was put in the wrong context. So the mind, it was like also a lot of small subtle things. I remember like one for a famous automaker. In one image, it looked like a little girl was going over a street in a nice sunny day, but a lot of the people thought she was going to be hit by a car. And that wasn't the obvious interpretation.
Yeah.
But it was subtle, and a lot of people reacted really strong to that. And it was just these small details. So you cannot be sloppy. And these are obviously, we have these 40 brands for like Coke, Mercedes, Volvo. We are the best brands in the world. So you have to be extremely careful when you build these narratives. And if you for some other big car company, if it was perceived that people were standing up against a wall and it was a bit too gray compared to like a little bit more bright colors, extreme bad reaction. So people are very, very sensitive to what's put out there. And obviously advertising is all about being creative and come up with new things. But you have to test it really thoroughly before you launch it. Yeah.
So you really have to test for the particular brand. There are not like overarching themes or patterns that you can predict the quality.
Yeah, so in the Stanford work, the Baba-Shiv methodology was based on 4 brain powers in essence. So stopping power, transmission power, persuasion power, and locking power. So basically different interplays of brain signals was taken into the account. So stopping power in essence was if your gaze stopped at an ad for a measurable amount of time, and what made you stop to look at it, because that's the first before you stop to look at something, there's nothing to measure. So that was a stopping power. Transmission power is in essence the way you interpret that, how much energy that's needed in your brain to actually make an understanding of the ad. And then we had persuasion power, is how much it's convincing you.
Okay, yes.
So it's both the convincing and it's around how strong you feel about it. So both motivation and the power of the feeling. And that's where we saw the 45% when people are not motivated, they're demotivated.
Okay.
All right. And then we have locking powers, which was basically how well you remember it.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 weeks later, but that was based on surveys. So that was a little bit of a methodological flaw. So we don't know if you actually just responded to the ads that were most known. And there we
I
couldn't really judge if it was the subconscious or not. But the first 3, it was all the subconscious in place, and especially the number 2 and 3.
What affected the stopping power then?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, so if you had a person in the ad, it had a really strong impact on stopping power. Right? I think almost like 25% increased stopping power if you relate it to a person. The other one was if you could showcase your product in a favorable way. It might seem like obvious, but that also had some around 20% positive impact. But if you put in like pricing, it had like 20 to 30% negative effect of stopping effect. Was the millisecond you notice pricing, you pivot away. And even worse, call to action if you were asked to do something with that. That was also a big no-no in terms of just getting that stopping power to work. Because obviously so where do you find the balance? Because you obviously want someone to act on it. That goes back to what we talked about before. If you win someone's trust, and they're waiting for the next ad, you created the space where they actually are willing to engage with you on a transactional level. And that's the battle where everyone is at. What strengths does the brand hold? What trust does each asset have that you push out? Because if you don't get it right, you will soon erase all your good brand will and the trust that you have built up by pushing weak creatives out. Right? And if you don't get the stopping power, you don't stand a chance of going up the value chain, obviously.
So what affected the transmission power and persuasion power?
So when we looked at transmission power, the understanding of the creative, the more you could have it's like almost like novel writing, like the more you could use like the product speak for itself without any explanation. So the more text that you used, the more negative impact you had.
Okay.
So you shouldn't try to over-explain your products next to like product images and so forth. So you should be very sparse when it comes to copywriting.
It's just more like impression, like the ambience, the energy you give out.
Exactly. You have so little time to win someone's trust. So the moment you try to over-explain, it's really easy to use that millisecond that you're trying to win. Interestingly enough, when we look at persuasion power, when it comes to ads, iGaming stood out. It was like a little bit different results. So for iGaming, the call to action was the hero.
Really?
Because people are looking for deals. So they want to have a good deal. A person in the ad had a negative impact. Branding, when people felt it was too much perceived as, like me as a brand, negative impact.
Wow.
So the call to action was a hero. Once you got someone to stop and look at the ad, once the message was decoded, then it was actually the offer itself that persuaded you to take action. Yeah.
But that was specifically different for iGaming.
Yeah, it was. Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Because everyone is looking for that deal.
Yes.
And act now. Like you have an instinct.
Yes,
you want to play now. Yes.
What worked for the other niches for persuasion?
If we look at persuasion when it came to auto, for example, if you're buying a car, in car advertising, the brand hold a big impact. So brand and price were the positive aspects. Pictures of cars themselves had a slight negative impact.
Really?
Yeah. So it was much more the feeling of the lifestyle you want to get into. Yeah. Yeah, no, super interesting. And we speculate a lot if it's like too many car ads actually look the same and cars tend to blend in and everyone...
So how did the successful car ads look like actually? Did they have like the price on the ad or were they like more just like people hanging out, or
Yeah.
they're actually cars in the
So it was much more lifestyle oriented in what we saw. Yeah.
Were there like logos somewhere visible?
Yeah, I mean, again, you have to remember that first you had to stop.
Yes.
So that was the first goal, and this is on the persuasion level.
Yes.
And here you have to find the right balance. But you still needed someone to stop looking at that, and then you need the product. So hence, here comes the storytelling in. Once you won someone's trust, how you actually leverage the message over time. So it's not only one time. This is over a long period of time. Yeah. So it's not like, what is the magic bullet here?
Yeah. I see. Wow, that's very complicated.
Yeah, it is. No, it is. Yeah, but it's also extremely interesting to dig into.
Yes.
The only company that's now continued with the brain scannings is Meta. So they just launched their solution called Tribe. It's actually Tribe 2, which is a software that was launched a couple of weeks ago, where they have continued with brain scanning. It's still not, it still has received some critique, and it doesn't tell the whole story, but it's getting in the right direction. The company that I did my research with, Neurons, has launched their platform only based on eye movement. So they have an interesting solution, but it's not based on neurodata, but rather eye movements, and they have gotten pretty far in what people look at and how it's perceived.
And is it only for like the ads you can see, or is it also for like TV and radio?
Yeah. I mean, you can do it for anything, of course. Yeah. You can also do it for TV and radio. The channel doesn't really matter. The methodology applies to any channel. Yeah.
How long does it take to run the analysis? Whether someone perceives the ads as quality?
Well, we did it over 2 years. I mean, it was an enormous effort to scan these brains over time. I think that you could probably do it faster now, but if you really wanna again, I mean, Nielsen have brain labs. You can go in and do studies with them. So it's still like there are brain labs out there doing this kind of job. There are basically two forces in advertising that are like the groundwork. One is called MER exposure. It basically says that the more you see in an ad, the more you become familiarized with it, the more you like it.
Yes, so you're getting used to it, right?
Yeah, you're getting used to it, okay? Which they've done a lot of tests on. They actually tested on people with really deep amnesia, so they didn't even know that they had seen the ads, right? And yet they came out favorable when they rated them. The big challenge is you don't know when that will break. You don't know where it ends, that when the favorability goes over to the other side, right?
Yes.
And that's what we tested. And that's where we saw with the 45% negative impact, which makes it really interesting. So the only company that took on the fight with Google in creating a better currency was actually Meta, who launched the Tribe software, but they also started to measure a lot of different other things in 2019. When they started to talk about the zero-click era. So Meta is growing twice as fast as Google in ad sales, because they have so many more signals that they put into their models. So that's basically what we and a couple of startups are mimicking. So we're bringing a lot more signals into building up an understanding of what truly works. MMM is only one aspect of it. I mean, the creative side of ads is still pulling the model. Super interesting data. Macro data is super interesting. So these are enormous data sets going into this model to try to create a reality for the decision makers. And it's only in the beginning.
So if a CMO is listening to it and other stakeholders as well, what's the first thing they should do after watching our podcast to check whether they have a problem?
Well, the first thing anyone should do in marketing is to make sure that they have their data together, that the data pipelines are drawn up to be able to, so you can do models in the first place. because a lot of marketing data is still siloed, so it takes time. I mean, I have clients that I talked to for a year and a half before the data got ready, you know? So it takes time to get the data. So if you listen to this, sit down with your chief data officer and see what the structure of your data you have today. Is it ready to be used for modeling? And if it's not, then you know what you're going to do with it in the next 6 months in parallel to, you know, all the work that you are doing now. I mean, there is no coincidence that the fastest growing segment in MarTech are the data platforms, the MMM platforms, all this infrastructure place that makes your data more usable now. It's not the tools that just create instant better results. It's the infrastructure that's getting built up. We are the fastest growing segment, so you can build models. You have the data ready for the bigger kind of work. So you can build your own in-house models based on only your organizational learnings.
And how do you find out whether the advertisements that you're currently running are negatively affecting your audience?
Yeah, so right now I can't do that because I don't have that capability. So what we can do is to take historical creative material and compare with each other just to see which did the best work. And then, like by design, you can see what did the worst. But we are more like evaluating which creatives that has the deepest impact from an historical perspective. And then we can start to forecast how you should build out your creative work. But right now, the ad creative is not our main focus. We will do it later. Yeah, and there are others doing it really well, and we can take their data.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where do you see the industry go from here on measurement? How do you see the future develop in the near time?
Yeah, so Fieldstream is obviously, we have like 5 startups that we compete with. But then we have the Goliath in California, which is called Alembic, that just raised 150 million. So there are like 2 to 5, and they did 150. So now our goal is to catch up, right? So we haven't seen many cases from them yet. So this is still early. So no one has really like become the market leader. It's still very fragmented. But the more the industry adapts to this new getting your data ready, everyone will get much, much smarter, really fast on what's working. So within the next 3 years, every company in the world will do MMM or something called causal AI to understand what actually drives effect. Otherwise, you will not stand a chance. The company doing it now have a fast mover advantage. Because you actually see now how you can gain leverage. But in 3 years, it's like having a CRM system. It's just a must-have to stay relevant. So right now, still a bit like, avant-garde. 3 years, complete the utility.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Staffan, for this conversation. And if anybody is interested in learning more, contact Staffan through LinkedIn.
Yes.
And we will also put the link to your platform in the description of this video. And of course, comment and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm very grateful. Thank you for your time.